Tonight we return to the golden age of America, the time of Indians and cowboys, where white wagons went off into the wild prairie, and there were cowboys and Indians and all that sort of stuff. And this story is going to be a little bit different from some of the ones we've had in the past. And some of our past stories, we have talked about the man in black and the man in gray. But tonight we are speaking about that boy Sky, a hero here at the Fireside Tales. And, we are not sure whether the character in the story, was Sky. We believe that he might have been a reincarnation of him, but there's no actual proof for that. This is just a belief that is often held here. So I'll just go ahead and tell you the story and let you be to decide. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about this, but I think the best thing to do is leave it up to you. So, anyways, Dott and his sister Bianca were living in a cabin out in the woods with their mother and their servant, Miss Luster, and their father, who eventually had to end up leaving. He left on a business trip, and they were left by themselves. Well, anyways, for a while things were fine, but one day Dott was out in the back and he was chopping wood. And as he looked over in the bushes, he thought to himself how odd it would be if at that exact moment an Indian were to pop out and just be hollering at him. And wouldn't you know, but that very next second, an Indian popped out and it began howling at him, and it came at him with its tomahawk. And Dott, he made a run for it. He began yelling to his mother that there were Indians and they needed to hide. And he ran to the door and he shut it. And just at that moment, a tomahawk crashed through the door. And Dott could hear yelling at the windows, and the Indians were climbing through, and the mother was doing her best to protect her daughter. But eventually they came in, and the Comanche, the Indians, killed Dott's mother. And Miss Luster and Bianca and Dott were lucky to be even alive as they were led off by the Comanche. Well, anyways, they traveled for many miles, and eventually Miss Luster managed to escape. I don't know the exact way that she escaped. That is lost to the records. But Dott and Bianca were left behind. And Bianca was very much terrified at this point. One of the Indians had tried to stab her in the hand. But when the Indians discovered that Miss Luster was gone, they were furious. They began to hit Dott, and they began to parade around him. And finally they ended up tying him to a stake, and his sister came yelling and trying to shield him, but the Indians just pushed her off. And they began to build a fire around him. They began to make the branches. But the entire time, no matter what happened, Dott just looked them straight in the eye, and he didn't even flinch. He didn't even blink. And this is when the part where we think that maybe Dott was the reincarnation of Sky, the sort of bravery. But again, we don't really have any evidence for this. All I can say is that the Indians were very impressed with Dott's bravery, and they decided he would make a good warrior. So they untied him, and they began to train him in their ways, and Bianca was led off to another tribe. And eventually Dott was a great warrior. He would go around to different villages and loot and stuff like that. But finally, the father heard about all this, and he got some pots and pans and some other supplies, and he gave them to the Indians in exchange for his children. And finally, the Indians agreed, but the chief didn't even think that Dott would want to leave. He thought that they'd just become too comfortable there. He seemed set in his ways. But strangely enough, Dott did want to leave. He did want to see his father. And all the Indians were very depressed at this news. But finally, the chief came up to him, and he gave him just something to take with him as he went off on his life. And it was a necklace. And it was said that Dott kept this for the rest of his life. Almost to his dying day. He did end up giving it to a museum, but that was about it. So, that is the story. Quite a marvelous story, I think. One of the most beautiful I have ever heard. Dott was changed from it. He ended up giving quite a lot to the Indians after this. But anyways, it's up to you. What do you think? Do you think Dott is Sky, and do you think Bianca is Mia? Let me know in the comments. But, as always, sweet dreams and good night.